You finish a long day at work. Your body aches, your eyes are heavy, and your mental battery feels completely drained. You collapse onto the sofa, thinking, "Finally, I can rest." You pull out your phone and start scrolling through TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter. You lie there for an hour, maybe two, convinced that because your body is stationary, you are recovering. But when you finally put the phone down to sleep, you don't feel refreshed. In fact, you feel arguably more exhausted than when you sat down. Why is that? Why does doing nothing often leave us feeling like we've run a marathon?
There is a massive misconception in how we view biological rest. We tend to treat the human brain like a car engine. When the car is parked, the engine is off and fuel consumption stops. But neuroscience tells us something radically different. Your brain, despite accounting for only about 2% of your total body weight, voraciously consumes 20% of your body's total energy intake. And here is the shocking part. That energy consumption doesn't drop significantly when you close your eyes or zone out. The engine never truly turns off. We have been conditioned to believe that physical stillness equals mental rest. We think that if we aren't solving a spreadsheet, writing an email, or engaging in conversation, our brain is in saver mode. But for millions of people facing burnout today, this definition of rest is actually the trap. While you are lying there, physically motionless, your brain isn't resting. It is switching gears into a specific, highly energy-intensive mode that might be the very culprit behind your chronic fatigue.
Enter the Default Mode Network, or DMN. Discovered by neuroscientists effectively by accident, the DMN is a network of interacting brain regions that becomes active precisely when you stop focusing on the outside world. It is the brain's autopilot. When you stop working on a task, your brain doesn't go silent. It defaults to this network. And contrary to what the name default implies, it is not a low-power state. It is a high-performance engine that immediately starts processing a massive amount of data without your conscious permission.
So, what is the DMN actually doing burning all that glucose? It involves itself in what psychologists call self-referential processing. In simpler terms, it thinks about you. It wanders into the past, replaying that awkward conversation you had 3 years ago. It projects into the future, worrying about a meeting that hasn't happened yet. It analyzes social dynamics, trying to figure out what someone meant by that vague text message. When you aren't doing anything specific, your brain is actively constructing the story of your life, past, present, and future.
Dr. Marcus Reichel, the neurologist who coined the term, referred to this as the brain's dark energy. Just like the mysterious dark energy in the universe that we can't see but fills all space, the DMN's activity is the background hum of your existence. It creates your sense of self. However, for the modern human, this function has gone into overdrive. Instead of simply organizing memories, the DMN in an anxious person becomes a torture chamber of rumination. It takes the doing nothing time and fills it with worry, regret, and hypothetical scenarios.
This brings us back to the sofa and the smartphone. You see, when you scroll through social media, you are putting your brain in a terrible limbo. You are not focused enough to activate the task-positive network, the mode used for deep work, which actually shuts down the DMN. But you are also not disengaged enough to allow true relaxation. Instead, you are feeding the DMN with thousands of fragmented triggers. Every post, every headline, every perfect photo triggers a micro-comparison, a micro-judgment, or a micro-worry.
Think about it. In a span of 5 minutes on TikTok or Instagram, you might see a war update, a cooking recipe, an ex-partner's wedding photo, and a cat video. Your DMN is frantically trying to process the social and emotional implications of all this disparate data, relative to you. Am I successful enough? Is the world ending? Should I be cooking that? You are not resting. You are forcing your brain to run a marathon of emotional processing while your body lies still. This is why you feel mentally shattered after an hour of relaxing scrolling.
Unchecked, the default mode network loves loops. It loves to ruminate. Research from Harvard University found that people spend 46.9% of their waking hours thinking about something other than what they're doing, and this mind wandering typically makes them unhappy. A wandering mind is an unhappy mind. When the DMN is hyperactive, it tends to drift toward the negative, a survival mechanism designed to anticipate threats, but one that is maladaptive in the modern world, where the threat is an email, not a tiger.
This constant background processing leads to what we recognize as burnout. Burnout isn't always about working too hard. Often it's about never truly switching off. If your rest periods are dominated by a hyperactive DMN fueled by digital stimulation, you never allow your brain's neurochemistry to reset. You deplete your cognitive resources on things that don't matter, leaving you with zero patience or focus for the things that do. You wake up tired because your brain effectively pulled an all-nighter worrying about things you didn't even consciously choose to think about.
So, what is the antidote? How do we stop the energy leak? We have to understand the relationship between the default mode network and its opposite, the task-positive network, or TPN. These two networks work like a seesaw. Generally, when one is up, the other is down. The TPN activates when you are fully engaged in a demanding task, focused on the present moment, and interacting with the external world without self-reference. To rest your brain, you don't need nothingness. You need to switch the seesaw.
This introduces the concept of active recovery. It sounds contradictory. How can activity be rest? Because true neurological rest for the DMN doesn't come from lying down. It comes from present moment immersion. When you are deeply focused on a task, whether it's a difficult workout, painting, playing an instrument, or solving a puzzle, you force the brain to engage the TPN. This effectively suppresses the DMN. You stop thinking about yourself, your past, and your future. You exist only in the now.
Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called this flow. In a flow state, the self-chatter vanishes. Time dilates. The inner critic shuts up. Even though you are expending energy on the task, you often emerge from a flow state feeling mentally rejuvenated. Why? Because you gave your default mode network a break. You stopped the internal storytelling. This is why a vigorous 30-minute run can feel more mentally resting than 30 minutes of sitting on the couch worrying about your bank account.
Another way to quiet the DMN is through what environmental psychologists call soft fascination. This is typically found in nature. When you walk through a forest or watch the ocean waves, your attention is held but not forced. It's effortless attention. Unlike the hard focus of a spreadsheet or the overstimulation of a phone screen, nature engages your senses gently. Studies show that a 90-minute walk in nature specifically reduces activity in the subgenual prefrontal cortex, a brain region linked to rumination and the DMN. Then there is the gold standard of DMN regulation, mindfulness meditation. Many people misunderstand meditation as thinking about nothing. It is actually the practice of noticing when the DMN activates, when your mind wanders, and gently bringing your attention back to an anchor, like your breath. It is a bicep curl for your brain's attention span. Long-term meditators show structural changes in the brain that allow them to switch off the DMN at will, preventing the energy drain of constant worry.
We must also address decision fatigue. The DMN loves to chew on decisions. What should I eat? What should I watch? What should I wear? Every undecided option remains a background process, draining your battery. Active recovery involves structuring your downtime so you don't have to choose. If you decide in advance that Tuesday night is for reading or Sunday morning is for hiking, you remove the burden of choice, allowing your brain to enter the activity without the frictional cost of deciding to do it.
To reclaim your energy, you might need a reset. Silicon Valley calls it dopamine fasting, but let's call it stimulation reduction. By removing the high-speed inputs, the phone, the fast food, the intense video games, for a set period, you lower the baseline noise in your brain. You make the DMN less twitchy. You might find that initially boredom sets in, but boredom is actually the healing state. Boredom is the signal that your brain is finally slowing down its RPMs to a sustainable idle.
Neuroscience studies comparing the brains of Tibetan monks to stressed Western professionals show startling differences in DMN activity. The monks, who practice varying forms of focus and compassion meditation, have a DMN that is far less reactive. They don't take things personally. They don't get stuck in loops. The stressed professional's brain, however, is often sticky. Thoughts stick around, loops repeat, and energy is wasted on internal friction. The goal isn't to become a monk, but to borrow their toolkit for survival.
In fact, we need to rebrand boredom. We treat it like a disease, but it is actually the gateway to creativity. When the DMN is not being force-fed content, and it is not trapped in anxiety loops, it can finally do what it was designed to do: constructive daydreaming.
And we cannot speak of brain energy without speaking of sleep. Not just hours in bed, but the quality of the shutdown. If you scroll until the second you close your eyes, your DMN is still revving high as you drift off. This affects the architecture of your sleep stages, that thinking. Poor DMN management during the day leads to a toxic brain at night.
So, how do we build a protocol for this? First, create transition rituals. The brain needs a signal that work mode is over and rest mode has begun. Without a ritual, the DMN keeps processing work problems. This could be as simple as changing your clothes immediately upon getting home, putting your phone in a drawer for the first hour, or a short commute walk where no podcasts are allowed. Establish a physical boundary that tells your neural networks, we are shifting gears now.
Second, curate high-quality leisure. Cal Newport, author of Deep Work, argues that leisure needs to be active to be restorative. Replace passive consumption with active creation or engagement. Cook a complex meal, learn a guitar chord, build something with your hands. These activities demand enough attention to silence the DMN's worries, but provide a tangible reward, a meal, a song, an object that releases healthy, sustained dopamine, not the cheap spikes you get from likes on a photo.
Third, try the 20-minute rule. Give yourself 20 minutes a day of intentional non-doing without screens. Sit with your coffee and just drink the coffee. Watch the rain. Let your mind wander, but if it wanders to anxiety, gently guide it back to the sensory experience of the moment. This builds the muscle of cognitive control. You are training your brain that it is safe to be quiet. You are teaching the engine to idle smoothly without overheating.
Fourth, leverage social regulation. Our nervous systems co-regulate with others. Being around safe, calm people can physically down-regulate your DMN activity. But this requires real presence. Texting doesn't count. In fact, texting often increases anxiety due to the ambiguity of digital communication. Real, face-to-face laughter and conversation engage the social engagement system of the vagus nerve, sending powerful safety signals to the brain that allow it to drop its defensive guard.
We need to fundamentally reframe how we view productivity. Rest is not the opposite of work, it is the partner of work. You cannot have high output without high-quality input and recovery. A brain that is constantly in the red zone of DMN overdrive will eventually seize up. By prioritizing active recovery, you aren't being lazy, you are being strategic. You are sharpening the axe instead of hacking away at the tree with a dull blade until your hands bleed.
The long-term effects of mastering this are profound. Chronic stress and DMN hyperactivity are linked to accelerated cognitive decline and mental health disorders. By learning to toggle between focus and true rest, you are protecting your brain's longevity. You are preserving your memory, your emotional stability, and your capacity for joy. You are taking back the 20.
Start today by conducting an energy audit. Notice when you feel most drained. Is it after work? Is it after checking your phone in the morning? Identify the triggers that send your DMN into a tailspin. And then identify the activities that make you feel timeless and present. Protect those activities fiercely. Treat your downtime with the same discipline you treat your work meetings. Your brain's recovery is non-negotiable.
So here is the challenge for the next week. Stop doing nothing. Stop the passive zombie-like consumption that masquerades as relaxation. If you are tired, sleep. If you are awake, engage. Engage with a book, a walk, a conversation, or a meditation practice. Be deliberate with your attention. Refuse to let your brain burn its precious fuel on the junk food of the internet.
Imagine waking up with a full battery. Imagine finishing work and actually having the mental capacity to enjoy your evening. Imagine a mind that works for you, not against you. This is possible, but it requires breaking the habit of the default mode. It requires the courage to be present in a world designed to distract you. It requires active participation in your own rescue.
Your brain is the most powerful tool you possess. Don't let it run empty while the car is still parked. Master your rest. Master your mind. Shut down the noise and truly, finally, live. Thank you for watching.